The rise of the Terrans. In a time not so long ago, Earth was a beautiful blue planet filled with life. But this peace was shattered when a great danger appeared in the sky. A race of brutal space orcs came to Earth. They were huge, strong, and feared across the galaxy. They had one goal: to conquer and consume. They devoured whole planets to fuel their endless hunger. The day they arrived is still remembered as the darkest day for humanity. Ships that looked like metal beasts descended from the sky, blocking out the sun. The warriors stepped out, their green skin glistening in the light. They roared with laughter as they began their invasion, believing humans were nothing but weak prey. But the people of Earth were not as helpless as the thought. Among them was Commander Elena Vasquez, a brave and skilled leader in the Terran forces. She was not only a warrior, but also a strategist. Elena had seen many battles, but nothing prepared her for the nightmare that was about to unfold. When the first attacked, chaos erupted everywhere. Cities burned, and fear swept through the population. But instead of giving up, humanity fought back. Elena gathered a small group of soldiers and scientists to form a team dedicated to protecting Earth. This team became known as the Terrans. Elena stood on the rooftop of a tall building, looking over the city of New York. The skyline was a mix of destruction and determination. "We can't let them take our home," she said, her voice firm. Her team looked at her with hope. They had lost friends and family, but they were ready to fight for their future. "Remember, we are not just fighting for ourselves," Elena continued. "We are fighting for everyone on this planet, for our children and for our way of life." The team nodded, their spirits rising. They were not alone. Across the world, people were joining the fight against the. As the Terrans prepared for battle, they began to understand their enemy better. They were powerful but not invincible. They relied heavily on brute strength and numbers. Elena realized that if they were to defeat they needed to be smart and strategic. The Terrans began training, learning to work as a team and using their surroundings to their advantage. Days turned into weeks as the war raged on. The Karak continued their attacks, but the Terrans grew stronger. They launched surprise ambushes and hit the supply lines, causing confusion among the enemy ranks. They had expected an easy victory, but they faced fierce resistance from the humans. Elena's team came to be known for their clever tactics. They used the city's layout to hide from patrols, striking quickly before disappearing into the shadows. They had learned to use the environment to their advantage, setting traps and using their knowledge of technology to create new weapons. One day, as they planned their next move, Torres, one of Elena's closest allies, burst into the room. "Commander, we have news," he exclaimed, breathing heavily. "We've captured one of their scouts." Elena's eyes widened. This could be the break they needed. "Bring him here," she ordered. The team gathered around as the scout was dragged into the room. He was smaller than the warriors they had faced, but he looked terrified. "Tell us what you know," Elena demanded. The scout trembled but finally spoke, revealing vital information about the plans and weaknesses. He mentioned their fear of fire and their reliance on a specific energy source for their ships. "Fire," Elena repeated, a plan forming in her mind. "If we can create fire traps, we might be able to scare them off and destroy their technology." With the scout's information, the Terrans began to develop a new strategy. They worked tirelessly, building devices that could produce intense flames and creating traps that would ignite when they stepped on them. They tested their inventions late into the night, excitement coursing through their veins. As the day of the next battle approached, Elena's team felt a mix of fear and determination. They were still outnumbered, but they had something that did not: the will to survive. The thought of their homes, their loved ones, and their planet fueled their courage. On the day of the battle, the sky was dark and ominous. Elena stood at the front lines, her heart pounding. The ships hovered overhead, blocking the sun. She could hear the distant roars of the warriors, but she did not feel afraid. Instead, she felt a sense of purpose. "Today, we fight for our lives," she shouted, her voice echoing through the ranks. "We fight for Earth and for each other. Remember, we are the Terrans, and we will not back down." The soldiers cheered, their spirits lifted. As the crack descended, the Terrans prepared to unleash their fiery traps. And so began the first major clash between humanity and the battle would be fierce, but the Terrans were ready to show the galaxy that they were not merely prey. They were warriors. They would endure, and they would rise. The first encounter. The sun rose over Earth, casting a golden light on the battle-scarred landscape. Smoke still lingered in the air, a reminder of the fierce clash with the Terrans had fought bravely, but they knew that the war was far from over. Commander Elena Vasquez gathered her team in their makeshift command center, a fortified building in the heart of New York City. Maps and plans covered the walls, each marked with the paths of past battles. "Today, we must gather intelligence on Elena said, her eyes scanning the room. "We need to understand their tactics and find out what they plan next." Torres, the enthusiastic engineer of the group, nodded eagerly. "We should send a small team to their camp. If we can get close enough, we can overhear their plans." Elena considered this. The idea was risky, but it might be their best chance to learn about the enemy. She trusted her team, and they had proven themselves time and again. "All right, I'll lead the mission," she decided. "Torres, you come with me. We'll take 2 more. We need to be quick and quiet." As they prepared, the weight of the mission pressed on Elena's shoulders. They were dangerous, and getting caught could mean death. But she had to do this for her people. The team gathered their gear, weapons, communication devices, and supplies, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The team moved out under the cover of night, the city a mix of shadows and silence. They navigated the broken streets, avoiding patrols as they made their way toward the enemy camp. The air was thick with tension. Each step felt like a heartbeat echoing in the darkness. As they approached the camp, Elena's heart raced. Huge tents made from thick hide were scattered around a central fire. The flickering flames illuminated the faces of soldiers, their sharp features and menacing eyes glowing in the firelight. The Terrans hid behind a ruined wall, listening intently. "What do you see?" Torres whispered, peering over the edge. Elena focused, straining to hear. "They're talking about a new attack," she murmured. "They plan to strike again at dawn." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the camp. They growled in anger, and the soldiers rushed toward the noise. "What was that?" one of them shouted. The Terrans exchanged worried glances. "Let's get closer," Elena whispered urgently. They needed to understand the plans. The team crept forward, moving silently between the shadows. As they neared the camp, they saw a Karak warrior standing guard, his massive form silhouetted against the flames. Elena signaled for them to halt. If they were caught, it would be over. Just then, another sound cut through the night, the roar of a beast, a monstrous creature used for scouting. The beast was loose and charging through the camp. It knocked over tents and sent soldiers flying. The Terrans watched as chaos erupted, giving them a perfect opportunity. "We have to move now," Elena commanded. "Stick together." They sprinted past the distracted guards, slipping into the shadows of the camp. Elena's heart raced as they moved deeper into enemy territory, adrenaline coursing through her veins. They found a small group huddled around a table, discussing plans for the attack. "Listen," Elena said, pressing herself against a nearby tree. The team held their breath, trying to catch every word. They spoke of their next target, an important military base near the coast. If they succeeded, it would be a devastating blow to humanity. "They think we're weak," one soldier sneered. "Tomorrow, we will show them the true strength of They will know fear." Elena's stomach twisted. She knew they had to warn their fellow soldiers about the attack. But first, they needed proof. They quietly took photos of the plans spread across the table. The more evidence they had, the better prepared the Terrans would be. Just as they finished, The beast from earlier returned, its eyes scanning the area. Alina felt a chill run down her spine. "We need to leave now," she hissed. They turned to run, but the creature spotted them. It let out a terrifying roar, and the soldiers turned, eyes wide with shock. "Intruders," one shouted, reaching for his weapon. Alina's team warriors desperately trying to escape. "This way," Torres shouted, leading them toward the edge of the camp. The beast was fast, charging after them. Alina could hear its heavy footsteps thundering behind them. They burst through the trees, making a beeline for the safety of the city. They shouted angrily, and the chaos behind them echoed in the night. Almost there, Alina encouraged, pushing herself to run faster. They broke through the final line of trees and into the open streets. Just as they reached the building, the creature lunged. Alina barely managed to slam the door shut before it crashed against the barrier. They were safe for now. Breathing heavily, they leaned against the wall, hearts racing. "We did it," Alina said, trying to catch her breath. "We have the information we need." Torres grinned, excitement bubbling in him. They won't know what hit them. As they gathered their thoughts and began to plan their next move, Alina realized that they had taken a significant step forward. They might be outnumbered and outmatched, but the Terrans had courage, intelligence, and the will to fight. They might have devoured many, but they would never consume the spirit of humanity. This was just the beginning of their resistance. The Terrans would rise, and they would. The gathering storm. The command center buzzed with activity as the news of the Terrans' successful mission spread. Commander Alina Vasquez stood at the front of the room, her heart swelling with pride. They had gathered vital intelligence, revealing the Karak's plans for the next attack. The atmosphere was electric. A mix of fear and determination hung in the air as soldiers prepared for what was to come. Alina looked around the room, noting the faces of her team. They had risked their lives for this information, and it was time to put it to use. "Listen up," she called, her voice steady and loud enough to cut through the noise. "We have less than 24 hours before the Karak launch their assault. Our next steps are crucial." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. She continued, "Thanks to Torres, we know their target. The coastal base must be fortified. We need every available soldier and resource to defend it. I want teams set up at all possible entry points. We can't let them get through." A soldier named Jordan raised his hand, his brow furrowed with concern. "What if they come with that beast? It's fast and strong. We need a plan for that." Alina nodded, understanding the urgency. "We will set traps and barriers around the base. It's vital to slow them down. Our priority is to protect the civilians and hold the line. We must show the Karak that humanity is not to be underestimated." Torres stepped forward, his enthusiasm infectious. "I've been working on some new gadgets. We can rig up some non-lethal weapons to immobilize that beast. If we can catch it off guard, we might turn the tide." The room erupted with chatter, ideas flowing as everyone started brainstorming. Alina felt the surge of hope and unity. The Terrans were coming together, stronger than before. As they divided into teams, she felt a sense of pride swell in her chest. "Stay sharp, everyone," she reminded them. "This fight is not just about survival. It's about proving that we are not weak. We are the Terrans, and we will endure." As the soldiers moved out, Alina found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. The Karak had thought they could consume humanity, but they had underestimated the spirit of the Terrans. Humanity was resourceful, resilient, and determined to survive against all odds. The next morning dawned gray and ominous, clouds hanging low in the sky, as if mirroring the tension building in the air. Alina and her team arrived at the coastal base early, ensuring everything was in place. Soldiers were positioned at every entrance, weapons ready. Traps were set, and barriers reinforced. Alina surveyed the scene, her heart pounding. "We need to be vigilant. The Karak are not just soldiers, they are predators. They will look for weaknesses." As the hours ticked by, The unease grew. The team remained silent, each lost in their thoughts, anxiously waiting for the inevitable clash. Elena gathered her team around her. "We need to stay focused," she said. "We've trained for this moment. Trust in each other, and we will emerge victorious." Just as she spoke, a low rumble echoed in the distance. The Karak were coming. The ground vibrated under their feet, a reminder of the impending battle. The Terrans took their positions, adrenaline surging through their veins. "Here they come," shouted one soldier, pointing toward the horizon. A wave of Karak warriors surged forward, their massive forms crashing against the beach. The beast from the camp led the charge, its eyes wild and fierce. Elena's heart raced. "Remember the plan," she shouted, gripping her weapon tightly. "Hold the line." As the Karak advanced, the Terrans stood firm, ready to face their foes. The first wave of warriors hit their defenses, and chaos erupted. Sounds of battle filled the air, shouts, roars, and the clash of metal against metal. Elena fought alongside her team, their training kicking in as they worked together to fend off the enemy. Amidst the chaos, Elena spotted Torres activating one of his gadgets. It was a net launcher designed to trap the beast. With a swift movement, he fired, and the net soared through the air, ensnaring the creature. It roared in fury, thrashing against the bonds. "Now," Elena yelled. The team sprang into action, launching their non-lethal weapons at the beast, stunning it long enough for them to regroup. The soldiers surged forward, and Elena realized they needed to push back. "To the front line. We can't let them break through," she shouted, rallying her team. They charged forward, fighting tooth and nail, adrenaline coursing through their veins. With every strike, the Terrans showed that they would not be devoured easily. As the battle raged on, the ground became slick with the chaos of war. But the Terrans pressed on. Each soldier fought for their families, their homes, and their very existence. The bond they shared grew stronger with every moment, and they knew they were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the future of humanity. Despite the odds, the Terrans held the line. They were battered and bruised, but they were unyielding. The Maya thought they could consume the Terrans, but the truth was clear. Humanity would endure. In the heart of battle, Elena felt a renewed sense of hope. Together, they would rise against their enemies, proving that the spirit of humanity was unbreakable. The storm may be fierce, but the Terrans would weather it and emerge stronger. The fury of the Terrans. The battle raged on, and the beach was transformed into a chaotic scene of war. Commander Elena Vasquez found herself at the heart of it, her senses heightened by the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The sounds of clashing metal and battle cries filled the air, mixing with the salty tang of the ocean breeze. It was a fierce reminder of what they were fighting for. Elena stood shoulder to shoulder with her soldiers, who fought valiantly against the alien warriors. With their grotesque features and brutish strength, had underestimated the Terrans. But the spirit of humanity was stronger than any foe. "Push them back," Elena shouted, her voice ringing out above the chaos. She watched as her team rallied, each soldier drawing strength from one another. They fought not only for survival, but for the honor of their kind. Torres, his face smeared with dirt and sweat, was at her side, launching another net at the creature that had led the charge. "I got this," he yelled, determination etched on his face. The net flew through the air and ensnared another soldier, immobilizing him just long enough for the team to press forward. Elena glanced around, assessing the battlefield. The Terrans had managed to hold their ground, but they were relentless. More soldiers were pouring in, and it was clear that they would not stop until they had crushed humanity underfoot. The fear of being devoured loomed over every soldier, pushing them to fight harder. "Regroup," Elena called out, motioning for her team to gather. They huddled close, forming a protective circle. "We can't let them divide us. Stay together, and we'll overwhelm them." The soldiers nodded, a fierce determination in their eyes. They understood the stakes. As they moved as one unit, Alina felt the bond between them strengthen. They were no longer just individuals fighting for their lives. They were a family, fighting for their future. Suddenly, a deafening roar echoed across the battlefield. The beast, now freed from its net, charged toward them with a primal fury. Its eyes blazed with rage, and it was clear that it was ready to take its vengeance on the humans. "Fall back," Alina shouted, instinctively taking a step backward. But her soldiers stood firm, ready to face the beast. It was as if they were all linked by a shared purpose, a silent promise that they would protect one another. The creature lunged forward, its massive jaws snapping just inches from Taurus's face. He ducked to the side, narrowly escaping the lethal bite. "I need cover," he shouted, scrambling to regain his footing. "On it," Alina called, her voice steady. She aimed her weapon, firing a series of stun blasts at the beast. Each hit sent a jolt of electricity through its massive frame, but it only seemed to make it angrier. "Everyone, focus fire," Alina commanded, and her team responded in unison. Blasts of energy filled the air, striking the creature from all angles. The beast stumbled, momentarily disoriented, and Alina seized the opportunity. "Now push forward," she urged, her heart pounding with excitement. The Terrans surged forward, determination written on their faces as they closed the distance between themselves and the beast. With one final push, they surrounded the creature, their teamwork unparalleled. Alina led the charge, her weapon raised high. "Together," she shouted, and they launched a final barrage of stunning blasts. The creature roared in agony, thrashing wildly before collapsing to the ground. The Terrans held their breath, waiting for the dust to settle. They had done it. They had defeated the beast. A cheer erupted from the soldiers as they realized they had triumphed against the odds. But their victory was short-lived. The Karak soldiers, seeing their beast fall, became frenzied. They rallied together, anger flashing in their eyes as they prepared for one final push against the humans. "Prepare for the next wave," Alina shouted, adrenaline fueling her resolve. "We have to keep fighting. This isn't over." The Karak surged forward like a tide, and the Terrans braced themselves for the onslaught. Alina felt the weight of her responsibility pressing down on her, but she refused to falter. She would protect her people at all costs. As the enemy closed in, Alina rallied her team once more. "Remember why we fight. We are the Terrans, and we will not be devoured." Her words ignited a fire within them, and they readied their weapons. The clash began anew. The Terrans and Karak locked in a fierce struggle. Blow after blow was exchanged, each side fighting for its life. Alina pushed through the chaos, her focus unwavering. She fought for every soldier beside her, for every family waiting back home. Despite the overwhelming odds, the Terrans held their ground. They were battered, bruised, but unbroken. Each fallen soldier spurred them on, reminding them of the sacrifices made for their freedom. As the battle raged on, a single thought echoed in Alina's mind. They would endure. No matter the cost, humanity would not be extinguished. They were the oldest space orcs, survivors in the face of unimaginable adversity. Together, they would prove their strength and resilience, showing the Karak that they were not just prey but fierce warriors. The fury of the Terrans was unleashed, and it would not be silenced. The cost of victory. The battle continued to rage on the beach, the sounds of war mixing with the crashing waves. Alina Vasquez and her soldiers fought with everything they had, but the cost of their resistance was becoming apparent. The Karak, relentless and brutal, surged forward like a wave, determined to overwhelm the Terrans. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a crimson hue across the battlefield, Alina found herself scanning the area for any signs of her team. The chaos was disorienting, and the bodies of fallen soldiers, both Karak and Terran, lay strewn across the sand. Each fallen comrade weighed heavily on her heart. "Watch your flanks," Alina shouted, dodging a swipe from a Karak warrior. The alien's claws barely missed her as she rolled to the side, regaining her footing just in time to retaliate with a stun blast. The creature crumpled to the ground, but she knew there were many more where that came from. Torres was fighting nearby, his face a mask of determination. "Commander, we need to regroup," he yelled, shooting at another wave of incoming. Elena felt a pang of urgency. "You're right. Fall back to the ridge," she commanded, signaling to the others to retreat. It was a risky move, but it was their best chance to regroup and strategize. They had to hold on long enough to turn the tide of the battle. As the Terrans fell back, they pursued them with savage glee. Elena could hear their guttural shouts, their confidence rising with every step they took toward the retreating humans. She felt a knot of fear in her stomach. If they allowed them to corner them, it could spell disaster. "Keep moving," Elena urged, her heart racing. The soldiers pushed forward, their eyes fixed on the ridge where they could regain a tactical advantage. But even as they moved, she could see the exhaustion etched on their faces, the toll of the battle weighing heavily on them. They reached the ridge and quickly set up defensive positions. The soldiers readied their weapons, panting from their effort. "Everyone, take a moment to breathe," Elena instructed. "We're not done yet, but we can't afford to let fatigue slow us down." As they caught their breath, Elena scanned the battlefield. The sight was grim. The bodies of her fellow soldiers lay scattered like fallen leaves. Each one represented a life cut short, dreams and hopes extinguished in the blink of an eye. The weight of their sacrifice pressed on her heart, a painful reminder of the cost of their fight. A soft whimper broke her concentration, and she turned to see one of her soldiers, Rhea, sitting on the ground, her expression haunted. "Commander," Rhea said, her voice trembling. "Are we going to lose? So many of us have fallen." Elena knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "No, Rhea. We are Terrans. We endure, and we fight. Every soldier who has fallen has done so to protect the future of humanity. We can't let their sacrifice be in vain." Rhea nodded slowly, but Elena could see the doubt still lingering in her eyes. "But how can we win against them? They just keep coming." Elena's heart ached for her. She had felt that doubt too, gnawing at the edges of her resolve. "We have something they don't, each other. We are stronger together. We have ingenuity, strategy, and the will to fight for our homes. We've survived before, and we'll survive again." Just then, a distant roar echoed from the battlefield, breaking the moment of doubt. Elena turned to see a new wave of charging toward them, their eyes blazing with rage. "Get ready," she shouted, rising to her feet. "Hold your ground." As they neared, the Terrans readied their weapons, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Elena took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. They had to hold this line, or everything they had fought for would be lost. "Now," Elena shouted, and the Terrans unleashed a torrent of energy blasts toward the charging. The blasts lit up the evening sky, illuminating the determined faces of her soldiers. Elena felt a surge of hope as they fought together, refusing to back down. They were met with a wall of resistance, but they kept pushing forward, fueled by their own rage. Elena's heart sank as she saw one of her soldiers fall, shot down by an enemy blast. But their sacrifice ignited a fire in the remaining Terrans. They fought harder, determined to honor their fallen comrades. The battle swirled around them like a storm, chaos reigning as the two sides clashed. Elena's focus was unwavering as she fought. Each blast fired an act of defiance against the darkness threatening to engulf them. But the weight of loss pressed heavily on her heart, reminding her that victory was not without cost. As the tide of battle ebbed and flowed, Elena noticed something shifting among them. They were faltering, their earlier confidence wavering. She realized that they were not just fighting a battle. They were fighting against a relentless spirit. The Terrans were not mere prey. They were warriors willing to endure and sacrifice for their freedom. With renewed determination, Elena rallied her soldiers. "Remember who we are. We are the Terrans, and we will not be devoured. We fight for our families, for our future, push forward." The Terrans responded with a fierce roar, their spirits ignited by her words. They surged forward, reclaiming the ground they had lost. The Karak faltered under their onslaught, struggling to regroup as the humans pressed their advantage. Elena felt a surge of hope and pride. They were not just surviving, they were fighting back. The battlefield echoed with the cries of humanity refusing to be silenced. Together, they would prove that they were not just old space orcs, but a force to be reckoned with. The turning point. As the battle raged on, the Terrans found themselves gaining ground against the Karak. Elena Vasquez, breathing heavily but fueled by determination, rallied her troops to continue pushing back the relentless tide of alien warriors. They had fought hard, and their resilience began to turn the tide in their favor. The roar of victory echoed across the battlefield, energizing the soldiers who had fought so valiantly. But even amidst this newfound momentum, Elena felt an unsettling sense of unease. Victory was within reach, yet she could sense that the Karak were not just fighting for conquest, they were fighting for survival. The Karak's leaders, towering figures adorned with battle scars, seemed to be regrouping and strategizing. Elena knew that if they did not strike decisively now, the Karak would adapt and the tide could shift once more. "Keep pushing. We can't let up," she shouted, urging her team forward. Torres and Rhea fought valiantly by her side, their faces set with determination as they pressed into the fray. They were no longer just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their very existence. But as they advanced, the Karak responded with unexpected ferocity. The alien warriors seemed to draw strength from their desperation. They pushed back against the Terrans with renewed vigor, their growls filling the air as they charged forward, weapons raised high. The clash of energy blasts and the metallic clang of weapons echoed like a thunderstorm across the battlefield. Elena's heart raced as she witnessed a Karak warrior tackle one of her soldiers. In a flash, the two were locked in a brutal struggle. Elena aimed her weapon but hesitated, knowing that friendly fire could prove disastrous. Instead, she shouted to her troops, "Get that Karak off him." Torres responded instantly, darting forward to help his fellow soldier. He fired at the Karak, striking it in the side and causing it to recoil, allowing the Terran soldier to escape. Elena felt a rush of pride. They were fighting as one cohesive unit, their bond growing stronger in the face of adversity. Suddenly, a booming voice rang out from behind the Karak lines. "Enough of this. We will show the humans the price of their defiance." The voice belonged to a Karak warlord, towering above the others, his eyes glowing with rage. He brandished a massive weapon that crackled with energy, and the sight of him sent chills down Elena's spine. "This is it," she murmured, her heart sinking. The warlord seemed to embody the very essence of the Karak's ruthless nature. If they could not take him down, all of their progress could be undone in an instant. The Karak warlord raised his weapon, preparing to unleash a devastating attack on the Terran soldiers. Elena steeled herself, raising her weapon with a sense of urgency. "Everyone, focus fire on that warlord. We can't let him unleash his power." The Terrans responded with determination, their eyes fixed on the towering figure. In unison, they fired their weapons, beams of energy lighting up the darkening sky as they struck at the warlord. The warrior staggered, a look of shock crossing his face as he absorbed the blasts. But the warlord's resilience was extraordinary. He roared in anger, shaking off the hits as he charged toward the Terrans. "Foolish humans, you think you can defeat me?" His voice was a deep rumble, echoing across the battlefield. "Stand your ground," Elena shouted, knowing that they could not falter now. The soldiers rallied behind her, pushing forward as the warlord closed in. Each blast they fired seemed to only fuel his rage, but they could not back down. They had fought too hard and lost too many to surrender now. In the chaos, Elena spotted a flash of movement. One of the Karak warriors was sneaking around the side, aiming for a flanking attack. "Torres, to your left," she yelled, pointing at the incoming threat. Torres turned just in time, firing his weapon and taking down the approaching. "Thanks, Commander," he shouted, his voice strained but filled with adrenaline. As they fought, Alina's mind raced with thoughts of strategy. They needed to outsmart using their numbers to overwhelm the warlord. "Form a line. We can't let him break through," she commanded. The Terrans quickly regrouped, forming a barrier of fire against the oncoming Karak. The warlord charged forward, but the coordinated attack began to wear him down. Alina could see the determination in her soldiers' eyes, their resolve unyielding. As the battle continued, Alina remembered the stories her grandmother told her about humanity's past, of resilience and unity against all odds. This was a moment that would define their future, and they could not allow themselves to falter. "Together," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We are Terrans. We endure. We fight." With renewed vigor, the soldiers surged forward, their energy combined as they unleashed a final, concentrated attack on the warlord. The air crackled with energy as beams of light converged on their target. With a final, deafening roar, the warlord was engulfed in a brilliant explosion of light. Alina shielded her eyes, the blast illuminating the battlefield in a radiant glow. When the light faded, the Karak warlord lay defeated, his body still amidst the wreckage. The remaining Karak, witnessing their leader's fall, hesitated, uncertainty creeping into their ranks. The Terrans seized the opportunity, pushing forward with fierce determination. "Now is our chance. Drive them back," Alina yelled, her heart racing with adrenaline. The Karak began to falter, their once unwavering confidence now replaced with doubt. The Terrans pressed on, feeling the tide of battle shift decisively in their favor. The sound of Karak warriors retreating filled the air, and Alina felt a surge of hope. They had turned the tide. They had fought back against overwhelming odds. As the battle began to wind down, Alina took a moment to catch her breath, looking around at her fellow soldiers. They were battered and bruised, but they had endured. They had faced their fears and emerged victorious. "Is everyone okay?" she asked, scanning the faces of her team. Torres nodded, his expression filled with relief, while Rhea managed a weak smile despite the chaos surrounding them. Alina felt a mix of pride and sadness as she surveyed the battlefield. They had won, but the cost had been high. The fallen lay scattered across the sand, a stark reminder of the struggle they had faced. Yet in this moment, they had proven their strength, their resilience, and their unity. "Let's regroup and tend to the wounded," Alina instructed, knowing that their fight was far from over. But for now, they had won a crucial battle in a war that would define their place in the galaxy. They would endure, and they would rise again. The dawn of a new era. The sun began to rise over the battlefield, casting a golden light on the aftermath of the intense conflict. The Terrans stood amidst the wreckage, catching their breath as they surveyed the scene. They had faced overwhelming odds and emerged victorious, but the cost weighed heavily on their hearts. Alina Vasquez surveyed her team, feeling a mixture of pride and sorrow. "We did it," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "We stood together, and we fought for our home." Torres and Rhea approached her, their expressions reflecting the gravity of their victory. "But at what cost?" Rhea murmured, glancing at the fallen soldiers around them. "So many lives lost, so much destruction." Alina nodded solemnly, acknowledging the pain that accompanied their hard-won victory. "I know. We'll honor their sacrifice. We have to make sure this fight wasn't in vain." As they began to gather their fallen comrades, a new sound filled the air, a distant rumbling, like thunder rolling across the horizon. Alina furrowed her brow and turned to face the direction of the noise. "What is that?" Suddenly, a sleek Terran ship emerged from the clouds, its engines roaring as it descended toward the battlefield. It was the U.S. Resilience, a symbol of hope and strength, now returning to support its people. The ship landed gracefully nearby, and the hatch opened to reveal Commander Harris, the leader of the fleet. "Commander Vasquez," Harris called out, his voice booming with authority. "I heard reports of your fierce resistance. I'm here to help." Alina rushed forward to greet him, her heart swelling with pride at the sight of their reinforcements. "We held them back, Commander, but we need to assess the situation. We have wounded and fallen, and we must prepare for what comes next." Harris nodded gravely, quickly assessing the battlefield. "You've done the impossible, Alina. Your leadership has inspired the troops. We'll regroup and plan our next steps. We need to be ready for a counterattack." With renewed determination, Alina and her team assisted in the recovery efforts. They worked tirelessly to treat the wounded, providing medical aid and comfort to their comrades. Every soldier mattered. Every life was precious. As they worked, Alina's mind raced with thoughts of the future. The Karak would not give up easily. They had tasted defeat, but their rage would drive them to retaliate. She felt a sense of urgency to strengthen their defenses and prepare for the battles that lay ahead. Hours passed, and as the sun reached its zenith, Alina gathered her team to discuss their next move. "We need to fortify our position and send a message to the Karak," she began, her voice strong and commanding. "We cannot allow them to see us as weak. We are Terrans, and we endure. We'll set up defensive perimeters around our base and gather intelligence on their movements. We need to know how they plan to respond to our victory." Alina looked around at her team, their faces filled with determination. "We can't underestimate them again. This is our chance to show the galaxy what humanity is capable of." As the Terrans worked together to fortify their defenses, Alina's thoughts drifted back to the fallen soldiers. They had fought bravely, and she vowed to honor their memories by ensuring that their sacrifices would not be forgotten. She would lead her people into a new era, one where they would not only survive but thrive. Weeks passed, and the Terrans worked diligently to prepare for the Karak's inevitable response. News of their victory spread across the galaxy, inspiring other worlds to rally to their cause. Allies began to join their efforts, united in their determination to stand against the Karak threat. Alina's leadership became legendary, and the Terrans were no longer seen as weak or insignificant. They were respected warriors, known for their resilience and ingenuity. As they forged alliances and gathered support, a new hope emerged, a vision of a united front against the oppressive forces that sought to consume them. But even as they prepared for battle, Alina knew that true victory lay not just in defeating their enemies, but in fostering peace among the stars. She envisioned a future where all species could coexist, where understanding triumphed over conflict. As the Terrans stood together, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, they understood that they were more than just soldiers. They were protectors of their world, warriors for their people, and ambassadors of hope in a universe filled with darkness. The dawn of a new era was upon them, and they would rise to meet it, united as one. Alina looked to the horizon, determination burning in her heart. "We will fight, we will endure, and we will thrive. For humanity, for Earth." With that, the Terrans prepared for the battles to come, knowing that their journey was just beginning.